organization, um, your organization in the name, and I just would love your thumbs up that you're okay with the recording. Could be physical thumbs up, virtual thumbs up, any sort of thumbs up would be great. Okay, we have a couple more people with their thumbs up, please. Fantastic. Okay, we're recording it, as you know, we're recording all the sessions, and of course we will share the recordings with you. We're not recording breakout rooms, so that will stay within your team. All those conversations will be just for you. During this workshop, if we not sharing the slides, it would be really lovely to see your faces if possible. I understand that sometimes it's not due to the restrictions on the internet or other limitations. That's okay, but it would be really lovely to have a conversation with you. And I hope you are all well. It's exciting to see you back, and I hope you had a productive month working on your theory of changes. And I hope that you found it useful, and you had an opportunity to reflect on the so very familiar things that you work day in and day out, and you had an opportunity to sort of zoom out and see your solution as a whole. I think in the multiple coaching sessions, we had a conversation that it's really important ensuring that this theory of change is helpful for you to reflect on your solution in the context of scaling and that part of that you are hoping to scale, and of course without losing the track side of pedagogy as such, and without losing the side of the learning outcomes, foundational literacy, numeracy. Okay, so what are we doing today? Today we are going to share the screen, so I will share. Oh, okay. Is it in a decent way? Can you see it? And it's not like a presenter view or anything like that? Yeah, fantastic. Okay, thank you. I love thumbs up. Okay, so we're talking about monitoring, evaluation, and learning framework, and it's day one. So we're not going to overwhelm you in one go, and we heard your feedback that you needed a little bit more time. So we extended this session slightly, but don't worry. Even if this session is a bit longer than theory of change workshops were, we will give you a break in the middle, in between. So there would be a short comfort break. We're not expecting you to sit down for 2 hours straight and think and work hard. So we will give you a little break in between. So what are we doing today? We are reflecting back on the theory of change and connecting the dots. We did promise you last time in the first workshop that theory of change will be foundational for everything and what you possibly could do with your organization, whether you're raising funds, whether you're establishing new partnerships, whether you're reflecting on the cost effectiveness and developing your finance models, or you are reflecting on solutions, its impact, and so on. So we will build on your hard work over this month on the top of the theory of change, and we will start to develop next layer. And there was a lot of questions throughout this month. How do we measure this? How do we identify this indicator? What questions should we be asking? And today and on Friday, that's exactly the space when we start to reflect on those things. We will introduce the MEL framework templates, and we'll start to work on MEL framework templates. We particularly will concentrate on monitoring, evaluation, and learning universe, so to call, where we will generate and prioritize monitoring questions. So we will have all the assumptions possible, then we will ask the questions that that is good to have the answers to, and then we will identify how to select questions that are the most relevant and the most useful for your organization that time at this time, and then of course the reflections. Okay, just to warm a little bit up and have a little icebreaker. I would love, I will stop sharing in a second, stop sharing the screen in a second, and I would love you to reflect just 30 seconds. It's a non-academic question, it's not a difficult question. If you are, think about a fruit salad, will it be and why? And as you are presenting, some of you presenting the same team, it's okay to repeat, but you don't have to. You may see your innovation or your solution in different ways, like a different ingredient. So think about different flavors, different textures, different colors, or different tastes, maybe. And think about what your innovation is like and why. Okay, I'm stopped sharing my screen and take it to the room. If you want, you can jump in or use the chat, but I would love to hear from everyone. If you want, I can start. I think our impact at scale labs are they are mango. I think they are full of flavor, bright colors, and they make everything very special. Okay, who would like to go first? John, go on.
I would say our intervention is apple. In South Africa, apple is cheap and you can always get it. So I would like our intervention to be a good, solid base for the fruit salad. Anyone can afford it and you can get it all year round.
Wonderful. I love the rationale as well. Excellent and super healthy and full of great nutrition. Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Who would like to go next?
Well, let me go because I'm also from Axiom. I was actually also thinking of cost, but wasn't thinking of Apple because I think our intervention isn't as cheap as others, but I think there's a good reason for the cost. That we there are good reasons for why we spend extra time on training. So I would have gone for pineapple. Also fairly widely available, but not quite as cheap as Apple.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, it could have multiple dimensions as we agreed. So apple and pineapple, wonderful. We have excellent excellent ingredients in our fruit bowl. Who would like to go next? What next ingredient shall we add for that fruit salad mix for today? Ramesh, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I think it is mangoes for us because like it's said to be the king of fruits, and yeah, it's like kind of cheap here. Like it's like available, and everybody likes it. Like nobody like never heard anyone who dislikes mango. Kind of yeah. So and like you can use it in any form, like raw form or like ripe form. So yeah.
Wonderful. Everyone likes it. Who doesn't, obviously, who doesn't like mango? Uh, okay, fantastic. We have Jasmine who also added some garnish with coriander leaves. I think it's actually mint at the top. So, but it doesn't matter. Do we think that CLR is mint or coriander leaf? Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
I don't know whether it's mint or coriander leaves. I found it as a coriander leaves.
Okay.
Yeah, but in India we never use coriander leaves on a fruit salad.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for the observation. Okay, who would like to go next? Chloe would like to go next. That's okay. You can put it in the chat. Sorry to hear that. Blueberries, love that. And I would love to know why, but just feel free to type in the chat. Mayuresh, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. I was thinking more of bananas. Again, for us, it's commonly available, it's cheap. Definitely something that everybody uses here. So it's more like a core part of the fruit salad, and which is why we picked it. So that's why our innovation is also a core part of the overall work.
Excellent. Love that. Jackson? Explanation why blueberries. Excellent. Okay, Kshitij or anyone else from CLR team would like to add anything to bananas? Different perspective?
Yeah, hi. So I would say a bit kind of oranges, like our interventions like bittersweet, bitter, sometimes like tangy sometimes. So I would say the CLR intervention sometimes like tastes like oranges.
Wonderful. I love that. Simon, welcome to the party. We're just discussing if your innovation will be an ingredient for the fruit salad, what would it be? We'll give you a second to reflect on. Chloe's already responded that it would be blueberries. If you have different perspective, please, you're welcome to share.
Okay. Yeah, it would be like the juice that lubricates the whole thing.
Excellent. Okay. All right, fantastic. In the interest of time, moving on. Thank you so much. I feel a little bit hungry now. I hope that you are okay. Screen, and I hope you enjoyed warm up. Thank you for setting up such a wonderful fruit salad. All right, back to serious business now. So what are we doing today and why we think MEL framework is important? So today we will be reflecting on what monitoring, evaluation, and learning is and what does this framework or tool does. Effectively, it's the navigation system. It helps you to understand where you're heading to, how to measure the distance to that destination, and how to understand the terrain ahead of you. It helps you to navigate. It helps you to ensure that your journey will be smooth sail without any bumpy country roads, and you selecting the roads that are the bestest for you. And if you happen to be on a bumpy road, how to avoid that and just ensuring that you will make it where you are heading to. In ensuring that every step you make is a step into the right direction, and that those steps are useful and helpful and meaningful. So as you know, that monitoring helps you to keep track, ensuring that you are progressing as you plan to progress and why, and you're heading into that direction. Evaluation allows you to understand how impactful, how meaningful that journey is, and reflecting on the journey behind you, that you are achieving the destination, as well as once you reach a certain point, are you actually there where you hope to be? And of course, the learning is a secret sauce, secret ingredient that help you to not just make sure that you have all these quantitative answers, but also next time when you are moving into different direction, going into new journey, into new context, you are savvy and you are aware in context of your implementation and in context of potential roadblocks or potential bumps on the road. So you can ensure that your vehicle, your solution is ready for that new journey ahead of you. So what does MEL systems help you with? They help you to have a clarity, what works, Why does it work in this particular way? What doesn't work again? Why doesn't it work? Does your activities function the way you hope them to, the way you planned them, the way you created them, whether you are achieving what you hope to achieve with your intervention? You can gather the insights, and the insights not only quantitative that are everyone very interested to know and often that very much valued, but also qualitative, and that gives you context, give you stories, give you understanding of perspectives of your different stakeholders, of different leaders, of different champions, or just in general context, whether your intervention suited and fitted well for the context where you're scaling. It helps you to draw the clear attention to the metrics that are important to you. So the reality is that you have a limited amount of resources, limited number of hours in a day, limited amount of budget, and so on and so forth. So how do we know, how do we make a decision that we are gathering and investing our time, effort into the things that will be useful for us and actually will be fruitful for our journey ahead or as we are progressing? When we are scaling, and whether we're fundraising, whether we are establishing new partnerships, very often we want to tell a story, and we want to tell this story about our solution, about our success, and we want to show that that story is supported by evidence and has a credibility, and we want to ensure that people who trust us and invest in us are on board and they are part of that journey. So the best way to communicate it through the through the data, through the insights, and take them on board for whatever journey it is, whether it's smooth sail or stormy sail. Nevertheless, clarity, transparency, accountability is the things that very much valued. And of course, when you are exploring new horizons, when you are moving into new directions, or exploring new domains, new types of users, new types of solutions or new features, that those explorations and those ideas coming from the insights and learnings that you gathered through the data and information about the world around you. So how do we get about it? So our starting point, a theory of change. You worked very hard over the last months to develop your theory of change. You work with your coach, you work independently. You met in the close small teams, you met in the big teams, you aligned on your theory of change. I believe that you all should be very proud of that journey, and your theories of change looks really fantastic. And they are getting there to tell your story, and they're getting there to shape, to describe your intervention, and they will help you to have a clarity in terms of what your solution will look like at scale. And that's the foundation for the MEL framework. That's something that we would want to incorporate as a basis for your MEL framework, for those, as now we will be working on these sets of assumptions, sets of questions, and indicators of how to get the answers to those questions. So that would be the MEL framework. MEL framework helps you to have a very good clarity, address the needs about what assumptions you have, what questions do you want to answer, what questions do you want to ask and answer, why those questions are important to you at this time, at this stage, in this specific journey within this program, or within this stage of your organizational development or solutions development. Why these questions are important to you, and how can we answer those questions? Do we have all means, all right tools in place, or do we have are we able to approach the right stakeholders to get these answers that are so much needed for further development, for scaling, and so on? And of course, who will be people who can help us, who is responsible for getting those answers, and what those answers mean for us? So what can we gather, and what steps can we make on the basis of those answers? Okay, so we're gonna drop these questions in the chat, but I would like us to have a very brief discussion in this group all together, reflecting on the following. So, have you ever developed any MEL frameworks? And if so, have you ever used them in your practice? What worked, what didn't work, and what key challenges did you identify in that experience? So I'll stop sharing. We'll drop them in the chat. Yeah. Have you ever developed the MEL framework? If you did, have you ever used it? And then what worked and what was the most challenging?
Are we to speak out loud on this? Or...
Please do. Yes.
Okay. All right. I'll be enthusiastic and go first. So yes, we have, and we have some thoughtful spreadsheets, but there's loads of different indicators across the whole, let's say, logic chain of, or kind of the whole causal chain of the intervention. And so it's noisy. I think it's coherent, but it's noisy. And what we haven't done is created a good hierarchy of interventions. And I think the risk for us is that we end up with this, like, either drowning in data or daunted by the prospect of trying to measure all of these different indicators, rather than being decision driven in our data and just decisions about which data points we prioritize selecting. So I think a challenge for us is twofold. One, prioritizing, working out which are the indicators that really are where the power is for our decision making and which are really consequential. And then two, going from having a MEL framework in a spreadsheet that is like, powerful but not like integrated into workflows and therefore inert, to having MEL where we're kind of set up to get that data as a byproduct of program implementation, and it's just so infused in how we work that we really are making decisions based on data. So those are, I think, our challenges, to prioritize and then actually get the data flowing.
Fantastic reflections. Thank you, Simon. Very helpful. May I ask a very quick question? And John, I can see your hand, so you go next. Simon, have you done the when you were developing it, have you done the prioritization exercise, or it's not something you have embraced yet?
I think implicitly we've done it in places. For example, we have correct words per minute, so oral reading fluency is a metric that we're measuring, and that would be our kind of go-to, that would link our benchmarking to our kind of routine data collection. But I think in other places it's very foggy. So we've got loads of different things we could be, and we're kind of talking about the way we've set up our MEL framework. It doesn't include that hierarchy. So if you were to look at it, you'd be like, okay, so you're measuring, there are 20 things you can measure, for which, I think this is what Samuel said when in his panel in Nairobi that you facilitated, where he was like, at Jacobs, they have 6, and they're very intentional about having 6, and they're at different levels, like student learning, teacher, implementation, partner, I don't know what. And I think, so for us, I think probably we should have one, like, flagship's the wrong word, but one kind of lead indicator that is the one metric that we track for these, at different levels of intervention. And it's something that bridges quality and quantity somehow. I don't, or maybe one quality metric and one quantity that add up to fidelity and impact.
Awesome. That's very helpful. We will have a prioritization exercise today. Maybe that will be an approach forward. That's very helpful reflection. Thank you, Simon. John?
I put my hand up because I feel like I was just nodding along with everything Simon said. I think that prioritization piece is key, and I fully agree with everything he said. And I think for us, one of the challenges with prioritization has been that, you know, there's a lot of people involved in a project and different people find different things more important, you know, so the implementing team and the people leading on like implementation really care a lot about, you know, a lot of the measures to do with logistics. Is it happening? Are the lessons taking place, etc.? Whereas those aren't really necessarily the highest leverage thing, but they're the ones collecting the data. So there's a whole kind of challenge between we can't collect all the data we would like to collect, and we really have a problem keeping everyone in our team focused on the same data, if that makes sense. Because for some people are like our end of the road outcome metrics, they're like, we don't even understand what that means, go away. We're actually interested in this. So that's been a challenge for us.
Fantastic reflection as well, very helpful. We will have a similar we'll have an exercise on identifying who is responsible people for what, and maybe that will help you to think about the process you can have and aligning everyone and allocating the jobs. But we'll get there. Very helpful, thank you. Would anybody from CLR team like to share their experience?
Yeah, I can get us started and others can add. So yeah, we've also developed it, and I think for us, a lot of things worked. I think is definitely only after that we are able to constantly reflect on how the work is going on, and whatever course corrections so far we've been able to do is majorly because we had that framework in place and we were able to look at that data. I think internal reflections also, I think, is a big thing that happens within an organization, and I think this helps a lot. A lot of our team members are able to reflect on that data and then see what next they can do in the session, what changes they can do in the way they are planning for their days and their time with the stakeholders and things like that. So those are the things that are working for sure. Challenges, I think, similar. We are at a point where we think we have a lot of data points, but a bunch of them are not used very actively. So do we still continue to collect those, or what is the way to sort of utilize it? So things like that. So, and also sort of in ability of our team to sort of analyze that data is something we are still feeling as a challenge.
Very helpful reflections, very thoughtful. Thank you. Team people, would you like to share, Amin?
Yeah, so Amin and yeah, myself are sitting together. We are on the same laptop. So we too have like the results framework developed. And yeah, one problem we also have face is like it's too lengthy, right? Like a lot of indicators put in like at each component, right? For outputs, right? Like then outcomes. So there are plenty of indicators which we have put in like in the RF. And so right now, so we are thinking of how to kind of like based on the theory of change, how to kind of shortlist which are more important for us to look at, and kind of how to make it more easy to kind of track and help us to measure the program effectively. So that's what something like we are right now looking at.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Team room to read. Jackson, would you like to jump in?
Yes. Yeah, we have the experience of developing the TUC and overall the MEL framework. So in our language, you call it RMNE framework. And things are quite working well, but we, as many of the organization mentioned here and partners and maybe across the globe, is the consistency of keeping that, let's say, that culture of data use. So, and sometimes, and in most of the times, it's based on the systems that most of the time, we as MEL personnel, we create. So, for example, we may start the program in region X or in country X and saying, we'll be collecting this type of data as we move along, and then we end up cutting those data down and saying maybe that no longer we don't know, maybe we don't need them anymore. And at some point we have already created the culture of this field people collecting those data, and then at the end of the day, we are going back to the prioritization stage again, because we see that there is no alignment between the current collected data with the program objectives. And we see that maybe at high level, we only need to collect this one. And then I'm going back to the Joanna's point when she was saying that we have a lot of people in the teams and they have different perspectives and requests. And then that's balancing that prioritization also has been a little bit of a challenge in some occasions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for the reflections. I hope that we would be able to address some of those challenges throughout this workshop. We not promise to solve all the problems, but we will make an attempt to solve some of them and give some tips how things can be streamlined or prioritized. Amin?
Yes, I just want to share my experience. So while creating the result framework, one challenge I had, like when we intervene with the beneficiary, so we provide the knowledge, then they can build their skills. Then they can build their mindset to the growth mindset according to the intervention. So one challenge was like that defining indicators for measuring the mindset. That was the crucial challenge for me while creating the result framework.
Thank you. Very, very difficult challenge. Behavioral indicators are really very, very tricky thing to do. And it's something that you may want to reflect on, just not only at your intervention, not only at the context, but also the theories related to the behavioral change, and you kind of utilize those for developing those indicators. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to share my screen and hand over to Sarah.
Thanks, Ekaterina. Before we dive into how to use the template and getting set up with your monitoring universe, just wanted to clarify that when we are going through this template, we're really focusing on questions that are going to help you understand how well your program is working. As part of many of your programs, you're collecting data that maybe teachers use or people in the school districts might use, and that kind of data, those systems might be overlapping with the information that's going to be helpful for you to evaluate your program. But some of it may not help you make decisions about your program, and you're also going to likely need additional data outside of what you're already collecting within your program for students and administrators. So we're really going to focus in on the questions that are going to help you understand how your program is working. The template that we shared ahead of this meeting has 5 tabs. So we're just going to briefly do an overview of what's on those tabs so that you know where to find everything. The first tab is just an introduction, some additional guidance about the purpose, the structure, the components of these tools. So there are no actions for you to take on this tab, but it's just there as a reference as you're working through the activities. The second tab has some overarching questions, and it's a place to think about your theory of change. So this presents the high-level questions that connect to each section of the theory of change. And these questions are common across all monitoring frameworks, and they're meant to guide the development of your more specific monitoring questions that are going to require specific data to answer. And the third tab is where we're going to start working, and this is the monitoring universe. So this presents a systematic and a comprehensive breakdown of all the possible questions and data sources that could, in theory, be targeted by monitoring. So all of the components of your theory of change are going to be here, starting at your resources and activities, moving through your outputs and all the other components. So these are all things that could potentially guide implementation adaptations and inform the evaluation of your impact. So as when we get to this activity, you're going to include all the questions that come to mind. So at this point, the idea isn't necessarily to prioritize, but just to brainstorm all the things you could potentially ask to help you get information about each of those elements of your theory of change. And we'll start by giving an example from Dignitas. This is about their Lead Now app, which the Dignitas team came to discuss at the offsite. So the Lead Now app is a tech tool that supports remote coaching of school leaders and enhances school-based teacher development in Kenya. And it's embedded in a larger coaching toolkit designed for school leaders. So to show how the MEL framework builds on the theory of change, for reference, this is their theory of change, starting with their problem statement, going all the way to their long-term goals. And the three elements that are circled here are the ones that we're going to reference in the MEL framework. So we're going to be looking at one of the inputs, or one of the activities, one of the outputs, and one of the outcomes. And so those elements are just copied directly from the theory of change right into the MEL framework template. So the activity that they included was training leaders in 3 foundational learning and pedagogical methods. And after the theory of change element, you'll put in the mechanism for change, the assumptions that follow that. So in their example, the mechanism for change was if instructional leaders are exposed to evidence-based FLN pedagogy through engaging context-relevant content, and if they receive timely feedback, they'll internalize and apply the methods effectively in their roles. So based on that theory of change element and that mechanism for change, the monitoring question that they generated was what processes and strategies were used in administering the training and how did they influence the outcomes? The reason that this question was important to them was to understand if the implementation of the training was completed as they'd planned it. And they were able to go through the same process for their output and outcome as well. So the example for the output is that instructional leaders are enthusiastic about enhancing foundational learning skills. So the mechanism for change there was that when instructional leaders find the training content practical, relevant, and aligned, they're more likely to adopt a positive attitude. The question that is aligned with that element and assumption is to what extent do instructional leaders exhibit positive attitudes toward those skills? And they wanted to know this because they wanted to understand whether the app's content and learning are positively received by the leaders who are participating. And it's exactly the same process for outcomes. So they were looking at teachers reviewing and using learner data to adjust teaching processes. And they wanted to know to what extent teachers use the learning data. And this was to assess whether the app leads to behavior changes in teacher practices. So again, the flow is starting, you're just directly copying elements from your theory of change, as well as the assumptions that you have already included in the theory of change, and then tying questions and explaining your purpose directly connected to each of those.
Sarah, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I just ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Sorry, I couldn't work out how to raise my hand in here. So just the previous frameworks, could you just track back to the previous slide, just so the overarching visual, this one? Okay, so just to clarify, am I right in saying that the scope of so you showed us so the 2 slides here. You've highlighted you've spotlighted 3 things on here, and so is the scope of the subsequent slide restricted to those 3 things, or were those 3 layers, were those summarizations of the activities, outputs, and outcomes? And how do you, and if they're not summarizations, then do you repeat this exercise several times, or does that, I hope that follows.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they were not summarizations. They were just directly copied. So we only put 3 as examples, but to complete the MEL framework, you would take each of those components. So I don't know.
And so then how do you manage the alignment between the activity output and outcome? So that's clearly I guess it's clearly very intentional, but looking at the previous slide, it surprised me that spatially they were not aligned on a horizontal, if that makes sense, because if there's a causal pathway between these activities, outputs, and outcomes. So yeah, because it's not random, is it? The choice of these 3, it's that these 3 are intended to flow through. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a good point. So actually, after the theory of change workbook that we've been working on is finalized, we'll share this template as well. This is more meant to be just kind of a 1-pager if you're looking to share it externally for different audiences. So this is more of a summary, and that's kind of why we recommend doing it in the workbook that we shared, where you do see that those really causal, logical links way.
I think I can see how for me, I get so overwhelmed when I look at these like spreadsheets. So pulling out and creating some white space around it, I think will really, really help. Thanks so much for clarifying. Sorry to interject.
Yep. No, thanks for asking. And so for that 4th column where you're talking about defining the purpose for the question that you're asking, there are 2 kind of buckets of purposes or rationales that you might want to reference. So one could be related to strategy. So how is this question supporting your strategic priorities? How is it going to help you learn and adapt your program to become more effective? The other reason that you might be interested in collecting data is for accountability, something that you need to report on either to your current funders or something that you think potential funders might be interested in, or other kinds of partners who might be looking for specific kinds of evidence before they're willing to begin a relationship with you. So this could be either current or anticipated future reporting needs. So when you get to that column and you're putting in the purpose, you'll want to be a little bit more specific than this, but these are kind of the 2 general buckets of reasons that you might want to collect this data. So when we talk about going from your theory of change element and the assumption that goes with it, and then thinking about how to turn that into a question, there's some features of questions that are going to make them easier for you to ultimately collect data on and answer. So here are some of the things that you might want to be thinking about when you're writing these questions. The first thing is that you want the questions to be very specific and very aligned with the theory of change element. So you really want to specify exactly what it is that you want to learn. So instead of asking something like, is training effective? You could ask to what extent teachers implement new classroom practices that are introduced in the training. Another feature of strong monitoring questions is asking questions about things that are measurable and observable. So you want to go from abstract concepts into something that you can track with real data. So instead of asking something like, are parents engaged? You could ask what percentage of parents attended at least 3 school meetings in the last term. Some other features of strong monitoring questions and helpful monitoring questions are that you want them to be clear, simple, and neutral. So by avoiding jargon, that's going to help as you're communicating this to other people in your team. Make sure that everyone understands what this question's asking. Avoid asking 2 things at once. So ask each each concept or each idea in a separate question, and avoiding leading language as well. So instead of why are teachers failing to use our excellent tools, you could ask what factors influence whether teachers use the instructional tools that are provided. And the last thing when you're thinking about questions is to keep the use in mind. So you really want to focus on high value questions that are going to inform decisions and help you learn and improve. So instead of asking something like whether facilitators like the branding on your training materials, you could ask whether facilitators find the materials easy to use. We're going to bring in one more example. This is from our program Thrived, which brings together teachers, parents, and local supporters by training community members as tutors, organizing community support, and engaging with parents. So here we've just focused in on the output. So you can imagine that these three outputs were all on Thrive's theory of change. So things like the number of workshops conducted for teachers, and the mechanism for change that we'd associated with that was that the effectiveness of the workshops depends on factors like prior teacher experience. The monitoring question related to these workshops could be to what extent teachers find the workshops engaging. And we would want to know this to assess the quality and the relevance of the workshops to teachers. Another output we are interested in knowing about is teachers trained in classroom management, inclusive teaching and instructional strategies. And for this, we might want to know to what extent teachers are applying newly learned classroom management and instructional strategies in order to understand how workshops align with teachers' needs and affect their practices. A third output that we're interested in for this project is the training materials that are developed and distributed. And we would want to know how teachers are using the materials in their daily practice to explore the usability and feasibility of the materials in teacher-specific contexts. So now we are going to go into breakout rooms to begin generating some monitoring questions and purposes for the theory of change elements that you already have put in your theory of change. For most of your workbooks, I've gone ahead and copied in some of the theory of change elements. If I didn't have an updated version, then I haven't done that for you. So your first step will be to copy over the theory of change and assumptions just directly from your theory of change workbook. And then the activity is filling in these monitoring questions and the purpose and rationale. So that's columns 3 and 4 of the monitoring universe, which is this third tab here. So again, the purpose here is to brainstorm all the questions you could possibly answer, and later we'll work on narrowing them down. So consider this a brainstorming exercise, and the goal is just to think of as many as you can. So while we're together, we're just going to be focusing on outputs, but after the workshop is over, you'll have time to go back and do the other sections of your theory of change as well. Before we go into breakout rooms, does anyone have any questions about what we are doing for the first breakout room?
Hi,
Great.
could you please repeat once again
Sure,
what
yeah.
we want to do?
Yep, we are going to start by filling in the columns 3 and 4 of the monitoring universe. So that's the monitoring questions and the purpose rationale. These two columns here. So if the workbook already has the outputs and the assumptions copied in, then you can move straight into the monitoring questions and purpose. And if those elements haven't been copied in, then you can start by doing that just using your theory of change workbook. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, Sarah, but we could not access the template you shared actually. So
Oh, okay. I can send an email right now with or maybe I can.
Step one, to access the template, May I ask for you to raise your hand if you don't have the access to your template? We have people team who needs access, I believe. Okay, we have inspiring teachers who also don't have access.
I've got access, so I don't know what's. But I picked it up from the email that just got sent called coaching communication. I don't know if it's that I've got a different privilege setting, but that was how I was able to access it that way. But I've many times had this problem of being prompted to log in and not knowing what to do. Chloe, see
If you don't have access to it, then I've just put in the chat here a copy of it. So just feel free to download it. You can work on it offline now and then share it with us later, or we can figure out the best way to work on it collaboratively later. But for now, you can just download it from the chat. So just let me know if you don't have access to it and you're not able to get it from the chat right now. But otherwise, I think we can go ahead and jump into the breakout room.
Everyone, I felt like it, as always breakout rooms does, interrupted on the most interesting place. So I hope you managed to finalize your discussions. If not, then you can continue with the next breakout room. Are there any immediate reflections or questions after this breakout room, after this exercise?
we had one. Sorry to be the guy that always talks. We're wondering about combining the two spreadsheets because just so that we avoid to deduplicate basically, and we also have some internal spreadsheets that are kind of attempting to do a similar job, and we're thinking that there's a risk of creating parallel monitoring universes which don't completely play together. And so we were wondering, one, can we combine them? Two, to what extent can we make changes to this that are in places structural, and really make it our own, internalizing it, but having it evolve, and it might look a bit different. How do you think about that from your perspective?
Excellent question. I think everyone would feel to ask that question. And considering that you all have versions of MEL frameworks, I will start and I welcome Sarah to jump in. So my first immediate reaction is come on the ride with us with this tool. Go through each part across 2 days and see what we're proposing first. So reflect on it as a whole. That's the first. Second, I think it's make perfect sense not to create or recreate multiple documents and align them. And once you reflected on this document, because I think prioritization part, what we're going to do in the second half of this workshop will be a really important step, considering the challenges we discussed earlier. So bring things that is relevant, and it makes sense that you've done a lot of this work already. And the third point to that is, remember, this tool should be very closely aligned to your theory of change, and it should be closely aligned to your scaling process. So then reflect on whether it's worth combining them or whether it's worth bringing only those elements to the part of your solution or part of your intervention that you are planning to scale. So first of all, reflect on the whole thing. Combine it what's necessary and make sure that you are not complicating it too much, because it may not be very much relevant to your scaling, and it will be very easy to lose sight of the questions that are really matter for you to answer within this program and within that scaling attempt and journey. Sarah, do you have any other thoughts in addition to what I've drafted?
Nope, I agree. That sounds great. And the question about Google Sheets, you're definitely welcome to put it in Google Sheets. And that goes for any of the documents really, but if you're just able to share a link with us once you have it in your Google Drive platform, then we'll be able to see it. But otherwise, that's great.
Maybe we can put a document with a link in that's just sort of takes you so that you still have a way to access it. in your repository.
Simon, did I answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, you did.
Awesome. Okay. Any other thoughts, reflections, questions?
I put
I
one
guess
put one in the chat.
Jackson, go ahead and we can answer in parallel on the chat to Amin's question.
Yeah, let me check 11 where is the chart? Yeah, so I was asking around the interventions learning as a goal, but how will insight from the monitoring field into adaptive management? Is there a process maybe for documenting the learning captured during the implementation?
So, sorry, can you rephrase
Yes,
the question?
yes. So the intro tab mentioned about one of the goal is learning, but how will the insight from the monitoring field into the adaptive management?
Okay, good question. Fantastic question. We'll get to the stage where we will start to reflect on actual real indicators, real data, and real ways of collecting that data. And the next step forward from that point will be developing the process and reflecting on what does this data help us to address, and what are the next steps, and what is the process across the board for us to reflect every so often, and how often do we want to reflect on the theory of change, on the MEL framework, and what are the key learnings, and how we can incorporate those key learnings into the program development, process development, the overall organizational development. So this will be very much align with what you will prioritize as a key question into your monitoring plan. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Okay. Should we take 7 minutes break and come back 1/2 for the second half, or for the last half now? So we welcome you back in 7 minutes, 1/2 of the hour. you're back, please indicate it somehow, maybe thumbs up or any other different reaction would be sufficient. You can turn your camera on if you choose. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Then we shall begin. So how do we prioritize? We develop the questions, and how do we make a decision that once we addressed all the parts of theory of change that you worked on, all the assumptions, and for one output you can have 5, 10 different assumptions, and subsequently 5, 10 different questions. And how do you ensure that they all good questions and they all might be helpful and they all nice to have information about, and more we know, more we equip to deal with challenges or with the context outside of our buildings or whatever it is. So how do we know that this question is the question we want to answer, as opposed to that question is maybe not quite the time for it just yet? So there are multiple things you want to consider, one of which is your strategic priorities for your organization and for your solution. Your reporting needs is another. You're reflecting on whether it's feasible to answer that specific question and whether it is practical. But let's talk about them a little bit more in details. So what do I mean? How do we identify the strategic priorities? So when you think about your strategic priorities, there are a number of things you want to consider. One of which, where we are on our scaling journey and how do we ensure and how confident we are that in our intervention design. How do we use the data that we are gathering and specific insights? How do we ensure that this data helpful to us, and how can we do we have the process to make our solution better? Do we have the ability to adjust the intervention design or implementation to suit the needs of the stakeholders of our typical and maybe even atypical users? And if so, in what way? And how do we want to ensure that we are using that data for the impact? And are we able to measure that impact? So what level of attribution is possible to gather? Then when you think that's your strategic priorities, moving on into your reporting needs, you obviously have funders, you have current funder of multiple funders, and they all want to know that you are on track and you're achieving what you hope to achieve. So you have some current priorities related to your reporting. But life doesn't end with those, doesn't stop with those current funders. You may want to acquire new funders in future, and it's beneficial to be prepared for those conversations ahead of time. So when you are reflecting on their agendas, their priorities, their language, it's something that you may already want to gather within the scope of your monitoring and evaluation system. It may be the data that would be helpful to open a lot of doors for you. So is it something that you are able to collect? Then, of course, you have the advisory boards, you have the director boards, then whom to your reporting, and they would want to know different variety of the indicators and success metrics and KPIs. You have the beneficiaries and stakeholders who would be very keen on learning about the solution, about the impact of solution, and so on. And especially if you have the champions or advocates for your program, you want to keep them in the loop of knowing what's happening and how you are achieving what you are desire to achieve, and how you're getting closer to the vision you had, or you said that global impact or ultimate impact that you hope to achieve. And finally, to what level data needs to be drilled down for your reporting needs? So is it some certain reflections of proportion, percentages? Is this data, aggregated data would be helpful, or do you need any specific indicators? So reflecting on all that scope might be helpful when you're thinking about whether it's the good question to be answering. Then that was about strategy. That was about reporting. Now there are two more elements to reflect on: feasibility and practicality of the gathering data. So how our insights, our knowledge about the world only as good as our data, and that what it means that if we're not able to collect meaningful data, good data, high quality data, is it useful for us? Any data is better than no data, or do we want one particular type of data, but that would be really, really great proxy for X, Y, and Z? What's available, what you're currently collecting, and also what you possibly not collecting, but would be good to collect, and fairly easy to gain, and also reflecting on the cost of the data collection. Do you need to travel? Do you need to engage multiple people? Do you need to have a special people who help you to collect certain data, and so on? So reflecting on the feasibility and costs. And of course, the time is also a resource, and that the time is very important resource that you may need to take in account. You can consider it that some data could be very laborious and really time consuming to collect. Other data, however, maybe a lot easier win in that regard. And moreover, you also can reflect on certain milestones for your organization that you may have, and you are keen to collect some data, but also reflecting on the time frameworks. Is it something that you have enough time to ensure that you're asking the right questions, to ensure that you're collecting the right data, to ensure that you have capacities on analyzing that data and get the insights if you need it tomorrow? Is it feasible? In some cases, maybe not. And of course, now practicalities. So we may want to ask lots of questions. We may want to know a lot about our learners. We may want to know about teachers, so many different things, how they're using the solution. Does it work for them? Does it not? What's specifically not working? And so on. But we have to remember that teachers or school leaders are very busy people, and sometimes we have to make sacrifices and ask only a few questions, but those questions that will be the most useful for you, as we don't have a luxury of overburdening them. Not from the ethical perspective, not from the quality of data perspective. You will have lots and lots of gaps. Then we also want to reflect on the context matter. I know I'm saying this word a lot, context, this context, that, but context does matter. And context may mean that the schools from where you want to collect the data are hard to reach. They may have no infrastructure in place. They may not have electricity or internet in place. They may be located in rural or conflictual areas of conflict or emergencies, and that have the specific limitations to your ability to collect certain data or find certain answers. And finally, even if we have the best data, even everyone provided us the most meaningful, deepest, and honest and transparent answers, do we have the capacity in the team to reflect on this data? Do we have a capacity to analyze this data? And moreover, even we do that with analysis, and it's rigorous and it's accurate, do we have the capacity and desire to learn from this data? Or is it just something that will be an exercise for which we tick a box, and we not really have the plan what we're using this data for? So those 4 things are really matter to reflect on. I know that within your exercises, within the breakout rooms, you've drafted a few questions, probably not too many of them. So we will ask you to reflect at least on those questions that you have drafted thus far, using the second half of the monitoring universe table. Is this question address our strategic priorities? Is this question address our reporting priorities, reporting requirements? Is it feasible and practical? And how do we make a decision? So if your answer to the question about strategic priorities and the reporting requirements is no, then you don't need to pursue with it at this time. If either of those, yes, either strategic priorities or reporting requirements, then you're reflecting further on the feasibility and practicality of answering those questions. If they both yes, then it's certainly the question that deserves to be in your monitoring reporting at this stage. It doesn't mean that if it's no at this stage, this question is a bad question. It just is what it means that this question is maybe not the time for it, and it means that you need a process, and how often you will reflect on the questions you develop. You invest time, you invest energy in developing this process, reflecting on the monitoring universe and developing their monitoring questions. So how often will you reflect on them? Is it by quarter? Is it by every 6 months, or maybe annually? And that's also fine, as long as you are coming back to it and reflecting that some questions you will answer and you may not need to answer them again. And some questions is maybe no for now, but they may become yes later. So don't abandon those which will be no for now. Okay, so if either of strategic priorities or reporting requirements are yes, then we're looking at the feasibility and practicality. If it's neither feasible nor practical, that's not a good question for now. We leave it aside. If it's either, if it is both feasible and both practical, then 4 yeses, it moving into the monitoring report. And finally, if the question is feasible but not practical, you need to make a decision, should it be prioritized? So that's the only tricky part. If it is currently not feasible, then the answer is no. Even if it's practical, but if it's not feasible, then the answer is no. It still stays in the monitoring universe. 4 yeses, we're moving question is the question we want to answer. If strategic priorities and reporting requirements, yes, and the question is also feasible, then we make a decision whether it's move along. Okay? Are there any questions at this stage? No? Then what I will ask you to do in the next 10 minutes, reflecting back on your document where you worked in the first breakout room, have a look at the questions that you develop and prioritize at least 3 of them. Go through this exercise. Is it your strategic priorities? Is it your reporting requirements? Is this question feasible? And is this practical? We will copy into this chat those questions that we just went through, reflecting on what you may want to consider when you are prioritizing. And if you very quickly prioritize the questions you develop, maybe you don't have 3 questions just yet, then discuss within the team what those questions mean for you. Where do you stand with the questions on your strategic priorities, on your reporting requirements? What capacities and abilities within the team do you have? And what is currently at this time is feasible and manageable and meaningful for you? Okay. Do we have any questions before we'll send you the breakout rooms? No? Sam?
Oh, I just saw Jackton asked a question, and I was just interested as to the reasoning that was, because I didn't fully understand the rationale that was driving the suggestion. So I feel like I would learn from it. But...
So the question is, would it be useful to include these considerations into the intro tab? I think that is a very good question, and we can do that. And yeah, that's a great suggestion. Thank you, Jack. Habib, would you be able to send or thank you. Hello, welcome back. Lovely to have you back. Any questions, any reflections from the breakout rooms? Okay, then.
Yes, ours is just that the content is really great, but we don't have enough time to do all of the thinking that's needed to make the most of it. So, yeah, but it's really, really great kind of scaffolding for that thinking. We're just going to have to do it a bit more slowly.
Fair enough. 10 minutes is not enough to make all those decisions and have the in-depth conversation. I agree with you, but it's hopefully a prompt for you to take forward into having those conversations. We will continue the conversation next. We will continue this conversation on Friday, and also. We will remember you have your MEL coach who will support you on your journey. So as you progress through that, we're here to answer any questions if you have any and support you further. Okay, so I'm just gonna share my screen very quickly and just a few things. So very quick reflections in terms of if you have one, that's fine, or just general reflection on the process of the prioritization or the process of formulating the monitoring questions. What is the one monitoring questions you discussed today with your team and actually excited to answer in your work? If you have one, if not, then just general reflections would be really helpful. Questions about assumptions you're making. That I love those. Yes, for sure. Every assumptions needs to be at least be acknowledged and challenged if possible. That's really great. Any other questions? Need more time, 100%. We didn't expect you to make all the decisions and develop all the monitoring universe within these 2 hours.
Katerina, I have another thought.
Please.
Which just because there's not so much speaking happening. That's the only reason I'm doing so much. But it is that I think one of the reasons we're struggling, or at least I'm struggling to get into the problem space of the very specific outcomes, indicators, and that kind of thing, is because we're starting, at least I'm starting from looking at a framework rather than starting all the way back and saying, okay, we're trying to get the teacher to improve, to change the teaching experience for the child by doing this assessment-informed teaching, by getting the coaching. So I feel like it would help me to be talking at the bit kind of higher level before going right into the detail. And I think I'm struggling to get my brain moving into that. I don't know if others feel that same experience of trying to go from 0 to 10. Or if that's just my way of thinking that looking me.
Thank you, Simon. Does anyone have a similar sort of reflection?
I think from my side, it's also quite interesting not thinking, because you're not working from scratch. So we're kind of working from both sides of these are things we're already doing, and these are things we think we should be doing, and they kind of almost match, but not quite. And I'm just wondering if in some cases, some of the things we are doing in terms of M&E, we should maybe stop doing, because maybe we've got an overly complicated sort of infrastructure and possibly some of it unnecessary. I don't know.
Did you have the same feeling about your theory of change when you were developing the theory of change document?
Our theory of change is so complicated, as I think maybe other people have also experienced that. It's just got so many moving parts. I feel like we haven't quite reached simplicity on the other side of complexity yet. And it's very hard to decide if any of it should be removed. But in a sense, yes, you know, there's an existing sort of program that's already happening, that's already moving, people are currently implementing, and at the same time, we're trying to look at its design critically, and that's a bit tricky.
Okay, that's very helpful reflection. Sarah, would you like to jump in? You're a coach for both organizations.
I just appreciate the kind of reflections that have come out of this process, and as we move into the final step of this process tomorrow, I hope that that will kind of bring some clarity about, now that we've done all of this, kind of narrowing it down, and that will make the kind of many pieces that we've worked on so far come together and feel helpful and manageable and useful.
I also want to reflect that outputs is almost like middle parts of your interventions. We chose the outputs on purpose as an exercise because when you scale, the outputs really matter. When you scale, especially into the new context, new regions, new areas and so on, you may want to know again a lot of things about your intervention and how it's being implemented on the ground. That's why we've chosen it as a point for the exercise. However, starting from the beginning and developing the assumptions and developing the questions related to what your activities are like, and going all the way down to the vision, and have the intermediate steps for the outcomes are also really important. So as a next step, I would encourage everyone to shift and move their theory of change, if you're confident that it's there now, into the monitoring universe and start developing and reflecting on your assumptions and work with your assumptions a bit more. Okay, we are over time. I have a very small ask related to our outputs. Would you kindly scan the code and feedback for the session? We are very open to learn, and we are very keen to explore your feedback and make sessions better and more useful for you. We moved from Zoom poll into the type form just to ensure that the confidentiality and anonymity is in place, and so you would give the most accurate feedback rather than using Zoom polls. So please scan the code and kindly leave us some feedback. We will be very grateful. And otherwise, thank you so much for your engagement. Thank you for being amazing today, and thank you for all your hard work. We are looking forward to seeing you again on Friday.
And just wanted to add, the link is also in the chat if it's easier for you to click on there. And echoing what Ekaterina said, thank you all so much for your participation and engagement. We really appreciate it.
If if you have any questions, we will stay longer. So please feel free to stay and ask those questions if there is something you would like to discuss a little bit more in detail.
Thanks so much, guys.
Yeah, Friday.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. See you on Friday.
Yeah, sure. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ekaterina, Sarah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, see you soon.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you and bye.
Thanks, Jackson. Bye.
Shall we stop recording?